Sup nerds, I'm CuppaJoey and welcome back to another episode of Hobby Drama. We all know the poor reputation that many anime fandoms have, with weeaboo and wapanese being used as an insult to this specific flavour of nerd. However, what happens when an incident completely ruins the already slightly tarnished reputation of a fandom? Please be aware that this episode will be discussing potentially triggering subjects such as anti-Semitism, transphobia, bullying, and insensitivity regarding the Holocaust. If you think that any of these subjects may be triggering towards you, then feel free to turn over onto another video. However, if you've decided to stick around, well, ladies, gentlemen, and esteemed MBs, please sit back, relax. We'll be dialing the clock back to 2010 and looking into what is now referred to as the anime Boston incident. This episode, I would like to give a huge thanks to Reddit user CopperWireTrees for taking the emotional time and energy to write this up, but also for giving me permission to read it out on my channel. They were the one that did all the writing apart from my commentary at the end. I do have a little bit of inside knowledge about this situation, so you might want to stick around for that, but the main story was written up by them. They were also very kind and friendly about giving me permission to read this out, so double thanks to them for being an absolute star. So without any further ado, let's have a look at the Hetalia fandom and the anime Boston incident. Nene papa, contexto chodai. Before I begin this sordid tale of a photo shoot gone horribly wrong, I believe that it is important to establish some context regarding what the hell Hetalia is and why it was, and still is, such a lightning rod for controversy and wank. Axis Powers Hetalia is a webcomic created by one Hidekazu Himaruya, and is basically a series of comic strips telling one of the many misadventures of a bunch of personified nations. It was initially set during World War II, but has since branched out from that era and has been renamed Hetalia World Stars. The comics are based around real history, but the main focus is on small, weird moments in history. As a result, the tone of the series is light and humorous, and the darker moments in history, like the Holocaust, are not discussed. Save for a tasteless throwaway line that was added to the English dub of the anime, and that can be found nowhere in the original source material. Hey
there, Hasselhoff! I've got a little surprise for you! Great. What is it? Another Jew?
Depending on who you ask, this is either a wise choice because a light and goofy comic about the genocide of roughly 17 million people would be in extremely poor taste, to put it lightly, or an ill-begotten erasure or outright whitewashing of the more harrowing parts of history. In addition to its subject matter, Hetalia's cast of characters also routinely received a fair bit of criticism, and one of the most relevant to the story is Germany. Germany, though he is depicted as an angry, socially stunted young man who views nearly everything through a military lens, is an overall likeable character, and since this series was, at least initially, set in World War II, there was a great deal of concern regarding this characterization. Was it really appropriate to make a character representing a nation that had committed outright genocide during the time that the series was set such a likeable dude? Himaruya went to great lengths to avoid portraying Germany as a car-carrying Nazi officer, and even implied that he wasn't overly fond of Adolf Hitler, but was that enough? While the vast majority of Germany's fans are not Nazis or Nazi sympathizers, the debate regarding the character himself still rages on today. Draw a circle, there's some frickery. Hetalia got popular in spite of all the controversy surrounding it. Its oddball humour and implied slash drew a lot of people in. The popularity of the series only grew in 2009 after Studio Dean picked up the webcomic and made an animated version. Fast forward to the Anime Boston convention circa 2010. The Hetalia fandom's exponential growth meant that there were a lot of Hetalia cosplayers at the con, and a lot of cosplays for one fandom generally translated to a photo shoot in Anime Con World. The organizer of the photo shoot, a Prussia cosplayer who went by Koenig Cupcake on LiveJournal, learned that the planned meeting place for the photo shoot was closed, so she moved it to another location which, unbeknownst to her, was a mere block away from a Holocaust memorial. This new location was also in a public area just outside of the convention, meaning that there were likely a number of non-con-going onlookers. At some point during the photo shoot, a group of Germany and Prussia cosplayers decided to do a Nazi salute, likely in a tasteless attempt at humour. A photograph of the incident was then uploaded to the Hetalia LiveJournal group, and all hell broke loose. Word of the hiling Hetalia cosplayers spread fast, and their actions were swiftly condemned by both people inside and outside of the fandom. Koenig Cupcake then issued an apology in the form of a post to the Hetalia LiveJournal community expressing remorse for taking the photo so close to a Holocaust memorial, and later, for the fact that the hiling had occurred at all. She also emphasised that she was not a neo-Nazi and that she was aware that she had exercised very poor judgment. The post garnered a great deal of responses from community members, ranging from people accepting the apology to people expressing bewilderment at the idea that the cosplayers thought it was appropriate to pose that way in the first place. As the apology is still up and readily viewable, I figured that I should read it out to all of you just so that you have all of the information. So, from Anna Scheiling Govasis, or Koenig Cupcake, a major apology for Anime Boston. I'm just going to make this brief because this was just brought to my attention and I'm having a slight panic attack over it. This year's Hetalia shoot had been moved because our original location was closed for the weekend. We tried meeting somewhere, but it was too small. Someone decided it was a good idea to lead everyone outside of the Heinz and down the block outside to the Prudential Centre for the shoot. I was just informed that this was a bad move. There was a Holocaust memorial a block away, and it had slipped my mind that it was Easter this weekend, and we were hiling for one picture. I want to shoot myself for this. I can't believe I had allowed the hiling to take place. I talk about how I don't want to cause drama in photo shoots and how I don't allow such things, but I did allow it, and I participated. I'm hating myself for allowing the Nazi salute to be involved in the shoot, despite all I say to avoid such controversy. Of all things to display, this was the worst. Even before the con, I had stated that if there was questionable material that someone wanted in a photo shoot, then it would be best not to do it. And why I allowed it, I don't know. I suppose I had just lost my head and was caught up in a moment. For this, I am beyond sorry. I can't think of any other way to say this. I did not know this until just now. I'm not from the Boston area, so I was not aware. The shoot had been moved while I was heading down to it. I would like to send out my most sincerest apologies. I'm so horrified. I didn't know, really, and I just feel awful that this happened. I'm so sorry, everyone. I don't know if there's anything I can do to repent for this, but I feel really terrible. It was such a stupid thing to do, and really, I can't stress this enough, I'm so sorry. I really, really didn't know. I can't believe this happened, and it's just something that's, unbelievable. I wish someone had said something to me or the other girl working the shoot, and said that this was near a Holocaust memorial, so we could have moved elsewhere. I just feel so terrible. I almost want to, contact the whole city of Boston right now to apologise for this whole mess. The least I can do for now is try to apologise the best I can to the Hetalia fandom. I really don't know what else to say, but I'm sorry, and I honestly did not know. I'm beating myself up for this. I wish I knew, I really do, but I just don't know what else to say, but I'm sorry. This was so out of line, and I did something horrible to the fandom, but I didn't mean to. I was absolutely oblivious to the fact that there was such a memorial nearby. If someone had just told me that it was a bad move, I would have moved this somewhere else. We could have crammed into a smaller location like one of the Allies or one of the alcoves in the Heinz. But please, I don't know what to do. All I can think of is to continue apologising until the cows come home. I did not mean for the fandom to be viewed so poorly. I've got absolutely nothing against the Jewish faith. I am not a neo-Nazi, I love equality, and I feel like my message was botched during this damn photo shoot. I'm so sorry, everyone. I've always seen myself as such a good fan, and I've let everyone down just because I was oblivious to this. That's all I can say. I'm sorry. Small edit. I know that this does appear that I seem to be more apologetic about the location of the shoot rather than the action, but after thinking more of it, the action is making me more and more upset to the point where words can no longer convey the anxiety. I want to thank those of you who are telling me that it's okay now and that the fandom doesn't hate me and that they understand that I didn't mean any harm by this. If I knew it wouldn't make things so much more explosive and bring things to a national level, I would write an apology to the city of Boston. As far as I know, the crowds of cosplayers at the shoot was so big that very few people on the street even saw this. I can't take back what I did, but I can continue to offer my sincere apologies. To the messages I've been receiving privately and on here telling me to grow up, I think my immaturity for allowing this to happen is where that need to grow up lies. Out of the entire group in that picture, I came forward and apologised. I knew it was wrong, and that in itself to me is one way of growing up. Yes, I did stupid crap at Enemy Next too, but I apologised then and I shall apologise now. I've done some stupid crap, I'm owning up to it. There's a difference between brushing off the fact that someone has offended thousands of people and admitting what you've done wrong. The first shows ignorance, the second shows something that others are calling admirable. I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but I am trying to make things better. I'm trying my best to keep up with all the comments now, to apologise to each person individually, but it's taken a bit of a toll at this point. I truly am sorry for all that I caused. Overall, as I'm looking back on this, the salute was the absolute stupidest thing to allow. Thank you for telling me I can stop beating myself up, but I'm still going to. I am not going to stop cosplaying Hetalia. I'm going to mostly retire my Prussia cosplay, but I'm going to continue cosplaying it and continue organising shoots and panels. I'm going to improve on this. I'm going to make things so much better. I'll do what I can to redeem myself, however huge an act it may be. I am now working to fix things, make it all better however I can. It was the dumbest thing for me to allow a salute like that. I never allowed it, and here I am, trying to make amends for letting it be seen in a public place, giving the fandom a bad name. Thank you to everyone who has granted me forgiveness. To those who have not, I don't blame you. And to those who can grant forgiveness for my stupidity but not the action, I agree with you even more. I'm going to continue to apologise for this as long as I can, and I hope others learn from my mistake. In the future, I hope that we will never see something this extreme surface again. So again everyone, thank you, and I'm so sorry. It didn't take long for members of the Hetalia fandom to express their hurt, bewilderment, and disgust in their own live journal posts, 2 of which can be read here and here. I will be reading these to you at the end of the episode rather than in between like I did the apology. General themes that kept coming up were the fact that this was an incredibly insensitive thing to do, even as a joke, and that it reflected very, very badly on the fandom as a whole. In fact, the Anime Boston incident, as it came to be called to this day, cited by people who are not particularly fond of the Hetalia fandom as an example of its perceived odiousness. That said, this incident did force the Hetalia fandom to take a good look at itself and be more proactive about policing its own behaviour. Photoshoot organisers at conventions began making it clear right out the gate that there was to be no Nazi imagery or posing of any kind. Though buttholes did occasionally slip through the cracks, like the Germany cosplayer called out in this live journal post, which I will be reading out after the other 2 live journal entries mentioned previously. Too long did it read, a group of Hetalia cosplayers did a Nazi salute at a photo shoot. Consequences ensued. So, I know that I said that I was going to be reading out the 2 blog posts where people essentially raised their concerns about the incident at Anime Boston. I'm not going to be reading all those out because after having a look through this one that OP kindly linked us to, they kind of go a little bit off topic, you know. It goes into shipping wars, as you can see here. Greece and Japan? What? Wine? Spain ex Austria? Why? You know, which is kind of, not really necessary when it comes to this particular incident, but they do actually talk quite a fair bit about the incident, at least in the beginning, so I thought I would just read a little bit out for you now. So they said, at Anime Boston last week there were a bunch of Hetalia cosplayers. A handful of Germany cosplayers decided to have a little photo shoot with some Prussias, Austrias, and Norway, and Denmark, and some other nations had. Before I continue, allow me to set the stage. This photo shoot was not at the convention, but rather near a shopping area in Busy Avenue. It was roughly 10 minutes away from a Holocaust museum, and to top it off, the convention was held on one heck of a weekend, Easter and Passover. And yeah, they digress, go on, there are some things you simply don't do for decency's sake, and then they even talk about how, in character, Germany doesn't do that in the anime at all. It's completely out of character for him to be doing that. And Prussia wasn't even around at that time. Oh boy. And yeah, they speak about how it's completely unacceptable, and this is something that I definitely agree with. But yeah, they go in a little bit onto slightly irrelevant stuff, so I'm not going to go fully into it, but it's, oh my goodness, just the amount of like the photo bucket, sorry, this image is unavailable, just, this brings me back. But yeah, a lot of people are talking about how it's an issue. This crap's been happening way too much and it makes me rage. I was glad to see the Hetalia fandom as a whole had a good reaction to the event and agrees that it is bad. That's something that I noticed at the time as well, As I said before, this is something that I was aware of when it happens. I'm also going to have a look at the other blog post because that one was slightly different. So let me know what you think about that one when we read both. So, we have the second blog post that was linked by OP here, but this one has a slightly different vibe to it. As you can imagine, of course, they open up by condemning what happened. They say what happened, exactly why it was such a terrible thing to do, and, you know, of course, condemning it as many people would do if they found out that people within their community were doing, you know, a Nazi salute, this kind of behaviour. It is disgraceful, and so many have pointed that out. However, the way that they go on to just keep essentially saying that Hetalia fans are still good beans, and that these were just a few bad beans in a big tin of good beans, going, I still like my fandom. And then they'll go on to say, yeah, here we are. We're not all like that. Feminists, Christians, fan shippers, da 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 da. We've all got dozens of groups that represent us and that we represent, and all of them are going to have constituents who want to make us hide our faces and cringe. Some of them are going to do raceful, hurtful, frightening, or offensive things, either through ignorance or out of genuine contempt and malice. Some of them are, essentially saying, hey, we may have racists in our fandom, but what fandom doesn't have racists? And I'm proud of it. This isn't really something that I can get behind. I can understand the fact that they want to say, look, I really enjoy this anime, I really enjoy this web series, and there's nothing that's going to stop me from enjoying it. Fair enough, they are totally entitled to enjoy what they like. However, to try and say, hey, we're not all like that. I mean, you can condemn something without trying to say, hey, we're still good beans, even though there are, in my experience anyway, there have been a heck of a lot of bad beans. They link to something here, but I can't really access it because, as you can see here, I haven't actually got got a live journal account, so no dice on that one. But as you can see, there is a lot of criticism as to what happened, as there absolutely should be, but the way that people have been approaching this criticism is pretty different. As for the butthole Germany that was mentioned, okay, so this was a guy who essentially deliberately went around in a Nazi version of Germany, going around in that cosplay, saying that he was just celebrating his German heritage. I mean, there's all sorts of stuff that people... Oh, no! Don't say you're a real Hetalia fan by doing this. Oh, sorry. This is my first time reading this, so finding out that this happened is a whole new thing for me. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot of strange things that people will try and condone while in cosplay. It's something that I really don't understand. But that was something else that happened, apparently. So, the commentary for this episode is going to be a little bit different than the commentary from my previous hobby drama episodes, because I was going into those situations with completely fresh eyes, being completely unaware of the fandom, and given my opinion based on what I've seen. However, when it comes to Hetalia, I used to be part of the fandom, and I absolutely hate it now, partially because of the reasons that you have just heard, partially because of my own reasons. Now, this certainly is not the first time that Nazi cosplay has been an issue in the Hetalia fandom. For some reason, people would believe that Germany or Prussia, or even Austria in some cases, any country, especially the Germanic ones that had anything to do with the Nazi takeover, that they were fair game for this kind of attitude. That you could be one of these characters and you could act in an absolutely appalling way because, hey, you were just being in character. It doesn't matter whether or not the characters actually did it, you were just being in character. So it gave this green light for quite open anti-Semitism, and it was very shocking to see. The Nazi salutes in this, in the anime Boston incident, is not the first time I've seen just freaking random Nazi salutes from Hetalia cosplayers, but also there was one photo that went viral around the same time with two people. I did manage to find it. I wasn't sure I was going to find it at first, But unfortunately I found it. I am going to be blurring out what they are holding in their hands, but I'll just tell you now it's guns. So, as part of a little kawaii fandom shoot, they decided to point guns towards a place of worship. Not just any place of worship, a synagogue. With the context of what has happened with the Holocaust, with the fact that there was so much ethnic cleansing, it's just, it just boggles my mind. I'm quite speechless at the moment, because this is something that I've witnessed, and it's something that I don't understand how so many people could believe that it was acceptable. And it isn't just a Hetalia fandom. I've noticed that with, I believe, Helsing, there is a Nazi character, and you would have some people that would go for, okay, I'm being a Nazi character, therefore I can act like a Nazi, and it isn't acceptable by any means, and I shouldn't really have to be saying that. Now, onto my personal beef with Hetalia, because, oh boy, we're gonna wind the clocks back about 10 years, and, Hetalia cosplayers essentially briefly ruined my life, to put it. I'm not being extreme when I say that. They did actually properly ruin my life for a very brief amount of time. Now, this happened for about a year and 6 months that this all happened, but the effect of it is still ongoing. I still suffer quite a lot, because of what happened. It sort of manifested itself in a lot of very, very bad mental health problems. It's often the subject of nightmares even. And what happened is I joined in with the fandom, and I dared to be a person in cosplay that was fat and that was transgender. And what had happened is I had had a small falling out with my friend. This is a friend that was very, very, very against me being transgender. I know that I'm kind of tea-spilling here. I have posted a little bit about this particular person on my Twitter, but she was there when I first came out as trans, and she was very, very heavily against it. She would treat me absolutely appallingly in regards to my transness, but I didn't really have that many friends at the time, so I just stuck with her because it was what I had. And we both got into Hetalia together, we both cosplayed. She made this huge thing about how she didn't know how I could cosplay a man, and you know, it was clearly a big issue for her at the time. And when I was there, now, bearing in mind, I was 17 years old at the time. I'd not long turned 17 as well, so I was still very young. I was still coming to terms with my transness as well, because there was nowhere near as, like, even 10 years ago, there were nowhere near as many resources to do with trans people then as there are now. And I believe that if I had the resources that are available now that I didn't back then, I probably would have been more okay with who I was. I know it sounds like I'm just rambling about being transgender, but this does have something to do with what I'm going to be going on to. This is all relevant, I'm not just talking crap, even though it's what I normally do. Now, this friend essentially spoke with some other people who had found me annoying, which, fair enough, you know, I was a teenager, and they decided to just full-on shame me for being a fat transgender cosplayer. Like, even leaving the convention, there was something about it that just seemed off to me, but I thought it's probably nothing. And then, like, a few days later, somebody said, "Oh, have you seen this?" And then linked me to this page where it was just nothing but comments about my appearance, comments about how ugly I was, how fat I was, how if they looked like me, they wouldn't bother going out, how could somebody bear to show off their arms? Bearing in mind as well, they didn't just post my cosplay pictures, they posted random pictures of me out with friends going, look at this, I can't believe that this is involved in the cosplay community. And then, of course, not only did, like, the whole fat shaming thing happen, but there was so much transphobia as well. I was 17 years old, and legit had adults zooming into my crotch on photos of me, trying to determine what genitals there were there. That's how intense the Hetalia fandom got for me. In fact, I've not even said it all. They doxed me to known sex offenders, okay? I was 17 years old. I was I had next to no confidence with my appearance. Cosplay was one of the few ways in which I could acceptably go out dressed as a man and be treated like a man because they were treating me in character, and I just could not do it anymore. After that day, it just was ruined for me for a good, 7 odd years, because to have yourself, to have people criticizing you, not just for, I'm a fat guy, I was criticized for weight a lot. I was less secure with my fatness then as I am now, but it was the trans shaming. It was a transphobia that really got to me, because there were all of these pictures being posted of me, and the sad thing is that I have lost so many pictures from that time of my life as well, because I just panicked and went on a full deleting spree when I had random freaking sex offenders phoning. But the real issue is that I had so many comments about how I was just some yaoi fangirl, that I'd seen, I was clearly a shipper, and that I had seen all of these pairings, and now I was thinking, ooh, gay cute boys are cute. I could be a gay cute boy too, and then I'll be a yaoi couple. And, that one, it's not true. I mean, the way that I've turned out shows that it's not true. But when you're debating your gender, and you're still not entirely sure, and you're having people say things like that, it really, really does make you question who you are. I know that so much of this is just me rambling about being trans, but when that was like a pivotal moment for me, was that age. It was when I had first come out. It was when I said, right, I'm going to live my life as male now. And to have all of that thrown at me, it was absolutely heartbreaking. There was so much dysphoria I felt. So many people making comments about what obviously made me look female, which is just the worst thing for any young trans man to hear. And yeah, like I said, they actually ended up giving my phone number and contact details and everything to sex offenders, like actual sex offenders, which was where it got to the absolute scariest. Of course, I didn't say anything. I just blocked and moved on with my life, and I wish that I had said something, because I was only 17. And yeah, I pretty much denounced the fandom after that. I left. I didn't really bother getting involved in anime for quite a long time, because it really, really did shake me. It was pretty traumatic, I'm not even gonna lie. But when I see things like this, and I see the lengths that people actually went to just to be in character and the things that they condoned, I mean, maybe it's kind of good that I got out when I did. There's no real kind of final thoughts, like Jerry Springer-esque final thought for this. I guess the main thing is that if you are going to cosplay as a character that happens to be a Nazi, if you really want to go about that, don't wear real Nazi stuff, and don't do real Nazi stuff. I mean, the Death Eaters in Harry Potter, bad example with, J.K. turfing, but they are, essentially Nazis without, you could have the dark mark and not a swastika. I mean, this is a poor example, obviously it isn't going to work with Hetalia, but essentially, if it is a real symbol, then it is completely unacceptable. As for whether or not the original people that did the salute should or shouldn't be forgiven, I can't say. I'm not Jewish. I do think that in the original, apology, it did seem that they hadn't learnt all that much. The thing that definitely concerned me about Koenig Cupcake's attitude throughout the whole thing was that they kept talking about how they don't live in Boston, how they didn't know that it was only a block away, how, if they had known that it was there, of course, they never would have done the salute. And I definitely agree with everybody saying, why are you doing it in the first place? The issue isn't, whether you're doing it within a mile of a memorial or within 5 miles of a memorial is completely unacceptable in any situation, and it should never happen, especially not for a freaking cosplay shoot, sorry. So, like I said, the people that were the most hurt by this are, the members of the Jewish community that may have witnessed this. It is absolutely not my place to say whether or not they deserve forgiveness, and I cannot say how I feel about it, so I'm not going to. However, I'm sure that if any of my Jewish subscribers did make it all the way to this end of the video, I know that this is a very difficult subject. Feel free to give some comments as to whether you believe that they should or shouldn't be forgiven. Please don't give me any comments about whether or not they should or shouldn't be forgiven. If you're not Jewish, I'm only really interested in listening to Jewish voices, as those are the ones that are the most affected by this. However, another concern that I had is that I'm not entirely sure whether König Cupcake should really be organising these kinds of meetups. So if you look at the end of their post, or rather if you remember, they actually said, I'm not going to stop cosplaying Hetalia, I'm going to mostly retire my Pasha cosplay, but I'm going to continue cosplaying it and continue organising shoots and panels. Now, I believe that if you are the person that organised the photo shoot that allowed a load of Nazi salutes to happen, maybe you are not the person that should be organising photo shoots in the future. I don't see any reason why you can't go along and participate with photo shoots. There's no reason why you can't dress up and be in them, but why are you organising them? If the last time you organised it, it ended like this, why do you think that you should be the one to organise it? It's not going to redeem you. Especially not when looking at the post again. They said that they had actually got into other controversies in different fandoms and different conventions. I just don't think that this is going to end well. I don't know if it did end well. This was like 10 years ago, so goodness knows what's going on with them now. I personally don't know if the Hetalia fandom is even still active. I know that most of them are around my age or older, so I believe that many are going to be, kind of have a quirked eyebrow towards this if they still exist. Not that I believe the previous fans would have just vanished out of existence, I just don't think that they're fans anymore. I mean, if you still keep up to date with Hetalia, feel free to let me know what's going on with it. Is the fandom still doing this kind of stuff, or have they learned from the first time? God, I bloody well hope that they've learned. Otherwise, this is just going to be an absolute disaster. So, if you have made it this far to the end of the episode, thank you so much for listening. It has been quite difficult for me, I have to say, because I had to unpack quite a lot in this episode. But I still felt that if I was going to be talking about hobby drama and as something really interesting that involved something that I was familiar with, I didn't want to hide what had happened to me. This is actually the first time I've kind of spoken about it properly, like publicly, so it does feel kind of good, I will admit that. I do apologise if this was a bit too heavy to listen to, that it wasn't the kind of fun, light-hearted comedy stuff that you're used to on this channel. But thank you anyway for sticking with this very, very tough, very arduous story. Sorry if I went a little bit too much into my whole a little insight into my whole trans discovery there. I really did think that it was very, very important to the story, especially when I talk about the impact that it had. But also because I feel that non-trans people, cis people, generally might not understand how a lot of that would hurt as much as it did. So, in that case, thank you for listening, thank you for taking the time to listen to all of this, and I really do hope that you were entertained despite the gravity of the subject. Well, that brings us to the end of the controversy regarding the Hetalia fandom and the anime Boston incident. I do feel like anime in particular has a wide open door for all kinds of drama, especially in the kind of way that the K-pop fandom does. So if you would be interested to hear any more about that, then let me know in the comments. Or if you have had any experience of drama within anime that you are aware of that you might like me to cover, then do let me know in the comments as well, and I can give it a little look. And as I say at the end of every episode, if you enjoyed hearing from this subreddit or would like to hear from any other subreddit, then do let me know in the comments. And until then, I'll see you all next time.